Hello, I'm Nick Reynolds, and today I'm going to talk about giant steps and a little kind of cheat code to get through it, particularly as a bass player. I've found over the course of the years that I'm not much of a shredder, and trying to play John Coltrane's cell over every single chord shape doesn't really suit me. And over the years, having been thrown into giant steps at multiple tempos over and over again, I've kind of found a way of kind of surviving through the changes if suddenly someone turns around and says solo, and I thought I would share that with you. Just to explain a bit about giant steps, I won't go too far into it, but giant steps is, Coltrane went through a particular kind of phase where he was getting into quite mathematical sort of ideas, based around people like Nicholas Slonimsky and his thesaurus, Dennis Sandelay and his polytonal scales, he started really constructing, I think, a lot of pieces that were really exercises to challenge himself. Giant steps being one of them, countdown being another. He wrote a number of these things based on this augmented triad. So basically, the way it works is that we have a series of key centers. Now, the problem bit of giant steps is not the second half, because the second half of it is really just a series of 2-5-1s that go reasonably slowly, okay? Even at a fast tempo, they are just kind of basic 2-5-1s. The main problem is our first bit. Okay, and actually being able to play through those changes if someone counts it off quite quickly. Now, the augmented triad, if you notice, this is the sort of first part of giant steps. What we have really is, this is how it's constructed. B is at the top, okay? The third of B is D sharp, all right, which is also enharmonically E flat, it's equivalent. The third of E flat is G, all right, and the third of G is B, so we have an augmented triad cycle, okay? Now, giant steps itself and Coltrane's kind of like giant steps changes phase basically goes anti-clockwise, which is why sometimes this is called the descending major thirds sequence, all right? Because what is really going on is we go from B to a G to an E flat, okay? B, G, E flat. I can go for a D7th and that's actually really all that's happening in the sequence itself. Now, so we're really worrying about going around this way rather than this way, and what's particularly cool about this is that all of this is founded on a whole tone scale, because if I put in the gaps between these major thirds, a tone, all right, we end up with a B whole tone scale. Okay, and actually this is really how the piece is constructed. So we've got our key centers, B, okay, G, E flat, okay, then a little 2-5, and then we've got G, E flat, B, all right, and this is all based across this, and all that Coltrane's done really is just put 5 chords in between the key centers. So we start with B, then we've got D7, then we've got G, B flat 7, which leads into E flat major. He puts a little 2-5 here, D7, which leads to G, B flat 7 to E flat, and so on and so forth, all right? Now, this is where we could go further and further into the rabbit hole of the kind of theory, but I don't want to do that because all I'm trying to do here is just show you a kind of solution that I've come up with that works quite well. So the first one is this. If I play minims over the giant steps chord sequence, okay, here's the sequence. Play minims over each bar, starting on B and just descending down a whole tone scale, I end up on E flat in exactly the right place, all right? So I've just got that 1, 2, 3, 4, the G, B flat 7, E flat, okay? Then I can just hint at that D7th, right? And then move into G, do exactly the same thing. G, F over the B flat 7, okay, E flat, then we've got C sharp over F sharp 7th, and then we hit B. So all I've got here basically is a kind of soloing principle, and then I can start devising lines off that, is this sound. So instead of just trying to sort of play a whole load of changes, what I've got is 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. I can go into kind of 2-5-1s there. Now I can do all sorts of things like basically just using augmented triads to actually solo over giant steps, or I can do something like little mistake there at the end, but this is just literally descending down a whole tone scale. Now interestingly, again, because of the kind of mathematical property of this augmented triad, I can also go up from the B, again playing minims and just using a chromatic scale. So if I do 1, 2, D7, G, B flat 7th, that takes me to E flat, exactly the right point, okay? Then I can play again a D7, bit of a tritone there, okay? Then I can come down and play G, A flat, this would be over the E flat, that over the F sharp 7th, which takes me to B flat major. Now this isn't now diatonically correct because the chromatic scale obviously isn't always hitting notes relevant to these particular chords, but I still get a kind of interesting kind of line that I can start working off. And so on and so forth. So I can start working off that. The third thing I tend to do if people are playing at a slightly slower pace is what I call targeting the 5 chords, okay? And in this case, instead of trying to again kind of like take every single chord as equally important, so if we were using that Coltrane cell, the 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3, and then 5. Instead of trying to go through all of that, what we can do is actually just target the 5 chord and lead into the 1 chord. So if I now play a solo, literally just using targeted 5 chords, you should be able to hear giant steps emerging, okay? And I'll play it at not too fast a pace. 1, 2. So that's another way of just getting through giant steps without, again, having to struggle through every single chord change. And particularly if it's going very quickly, it gives you much more sort of leeway to kind of breathe and do something interesting. The final interesting thing on the bass is if you have a look at the way the bass is constructed and the actual key centres that we've got, when we go down these kind of augmented fifth intervals around the triangle, what we end up with is this. Countdown, because countdown literally works like this and just goes down tone by tone. That is all that actually happens in countdown on the bass, which I will do a different tutorial to at another time. But anyway, hopefully that gives you some ideas around getting through giant steps. And if you do like the kind of shedding thing, then there are some absolutely fantastic videos on it, including I think Charles Burthout, who does kind of 10 steps to giant steps. Or 10 levels of difficulty, and one of my favourite versions, which is actually John Patitucci playing just a duet with a drummer, who is it, Bill Stewart, and that's a fantastic version, giant steps, just with bass and drums. But my way is a kind of slower, slightly gentler way. Alright, thank you.